My name is Samantha, I'm 30, and at my own birthday dinner, my sister announced she was pregnant with my husband's baby. Before I tell you how I revealed a medical secret that shattered their world in seconds, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The restaurant, Merlot, was supposed to be my safe space. The warm amber lighting, the smell of rosemary bread, the exposed brick walls, it was the one place in Chicago that felt like a celebration. But as I sat there, waiting for my husband, a familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. My 30th birthday. It was supposed to be a milestone, a new beginning. I had no idea how right I was. My parents were already there, their smiles a little too tight. My father handed me a small gift bag. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." My mother fussed with my hair. "You look nice, Samantha. That lipstick is a bit bold, though." I hadn't even taken my coat off. Classic. Then, the commotion at the door. It was my sister, Jessica. 4 years younger, a lifetime ahead in the family's unofficial competition. She was a hurricane in a tight red dress, her blonde hair bouncing, her laugh echoing through the restaurant. And holding the door for her, his hand resting just a little too long on the small of her back, was my husband, Kyle. My heart stopped. Just for a second. They walked over, smiling like they'd just shared a private joke. "Sorry we're late," Jessica chirped, kissing the air next to my cheek. Ran into Kyle in the parking lot. What a coincidence, right? Kyle avoided my eyes. He squeezed my shoulder. "Happy birthday, Sam. Work thing ran late." He smelled like he just showered, his cologne sharp and fresh. The lie was so blatant it felt like a slap. The dinner was a blur of my parents talking about their recent cruise and Jessica interrupting with stories about her amazing sales career. Kyle was a ghost at the table, silent and less spoken to. I put my hand on his knee under the table, searching for some connection, and he flinched. Then came the cake. A single candle flickered on a small chocolate lava cake. As my father started to raise his glass for a toast, Jessica stood up, placing a hand dramatically on her stomach. "Actually," she said, her voice ringing with triumph, "I have an announcement." The table went silent. All eyes were on her. I wasn't going to say anything yet, but since we're all family. "I'm pregnant." My mother gasped, pure delight on her face. "Oh, Jessica. That's wonderful. When are you due?" "About 10 weeks, Jessica said, her eyes locking onto mine. They were gleaming, hard and victorious. "But there's more." She paused, letting the silence stretch, savoring the moment. "Kyle's the father. We're a family now, Sam." The world went quiet. The clinking of silverware from other tables, the low hum of conversation, it all faded away. There was only the roaring in my ears and the sight of my sister's smug smile. Kyle stared at the tablecloth, his face the color of ash. My mother's smile collapsed. My father's wineglass froze halfway to his lips. This was it. The moment she had been working toward her entire life. The final, ultimate theft. But as they all waited for me to shatter, for the tears and the screaming that would prove her victory, something else happened. A strange, cold calm washed over me. I looked at my husband, the man I had loved for 7 years. I looked at my sister, the girl who had shared my childhood. And I felt nothing but the icy clarity of the end. I picked up my wineglass, the stem cool against my trembling fingers. I raised it, my hand surprisingly steady. And I smiled back at them, a slow, chilling smile that wiped the triumph right off my sister's face. They thought they were dropping a bomb. They had no idea I was holding the detonator to a much, much bigger one. Growing up, my parents had 2 daughters, but only one golden child. Jessica could do no wrong. When I was 10, I won the state spelling bee. My parents nodded and said, "That's nice, dear," before turning their full attention to the finger painting Jessica had brought home from school, which they immediately framed and hung in the living room. My straight A report cards were met with the same lukewarm approval, while Jessica's C's were excused as a sign of her creative spirit. It wasn't that they didn't love me. It was that they were in awe of her. She was volatile, exciting, unpredictable. I was just dependable. The responsible one. The one who never made waves. And Jessica, she learned early on that whatever was mine was fair game. My favorite teddy bear, the sweater I saved up for, my friends. She had a way of taking things without ever seeming like the villain. My parents just called it sharing. "Why can't you just share with your sister, Sam?" was the soundtrack of my childhood. The worst was my senior year of high school. I landed the lead in the school play, Our Town. It was the first thing that was truly mine, something I had earned through sheer hard work. Jessica, who had never shown an ounce of interest in theater, suddenly decided she needed to be on the stage crew. On opening night, just as I was about to go on, my mother called me backstage, frantic. Jessica had collapsed. She had a sudden, terrifying fever. My parents rushed her to the emergency room, missing my performance entirely. I went on stage, my heart in pieces, delivering my lines to an audience where the two most important seats were empty. Later that night, I found Jessica in her room, perfectly fine, watching a movie and laughing on the phone with a friend. There was no fever. There was never a fever. When I confronted her, she just shrugged. Mom was overreacting. Besides, it's just a stupid play. My parents believed her, of course. I was being dramatic. That was the day I decided I had to get out. I applied to Northwestern, 3 states away. College was my escape, and for 4 years, I breathed freely for the first time. I wasn't Jessica's older sister. I was just Samantha. I found my passion for marketing, I made real friends, and in my junior year, I met Kyle. He was smart, funny, and kind in a way that felt like coming home. He saw me. He celebrated my ambitions. When he proposed on the shore of Lake Michigan at sunrise, I cried because I finally believed I could have a life that wasn't defined by my family's shadow. But the shadow has a way of creeping back in. When we got engaged, my mother insisted Jessica be my maid of honor. It would break her heart otherwise, she'd said. At the rehearsal dinner, Jessica gave a toast. It was a masterpiece of passive aggression. She told stories from our childhood that made me sound boring and controlling, while painting herself as the free-spirited victim of my jealousy. She did it all with a sweet smile, and everyone laughed, except me. I saw it for what it was, a public rewriting of history, putting me back in my place. The deepest cut, though, came 2 years into our marriage. I wanted kids. I ached for a family of my own, a real one, built on mutual love and respect. But Kyle was hesitant. He kept putting it off. Finally, one night, he sat me down. "Sam," he said, his voice heavy, "I don't think I'm cut out to be a father. The responsibility, it terrifies me. I love what we have, just us. I don't want that to change." It felt like a punch to the gut. But I loved him. And love, I thought, meant sacrifice. "What are you saying, Kyle?" I asked, my throat tight. He told me he'd been researching a vasectomy. A permanent solution. He saw the look on my face and took my hands. "Please, Sam. This is what I need to feel secure. For us." So I did it. I buried my own dream. I smiled and told him I understood. I held his hand at the clinic. I brought him frozen peas as he recovered on the couch. I sacrificed a part of my soul for his peace of mind, for our marriage. Because that's what you do for the person you love. You put them first. That was the foundation of our life together. A life built on my quiet sacrifices. A life that, as it turned out, was a complete and utter lie. The first crack in the facade appeared about a year ago. Kyle started working late. His phone, which used to be communal property, was suddenly always face down, locked. He'd jump if I walked in while he was texting. The intimacy between us faded. We went from being lovers to roommates who shared a mortgage. "It's just stress from the new promotion," he'd say. "Things will get back to normal." But they never did. I started noticing things. The faint scent of a perfume that wasn't mine clinging to his shirts. A long, blonde hair on his jacket collar. Jessica's hair. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my childhood insecurities were poisoning my marriage. They lived in the same city, but we barely saw her. It couldn't be. Then, 3 months before my 30th birthday, the world fell out from under me. My laptop had crashed, and I needed to finish a presentation for a major client. Kyle was in the shower. "Just use mine," he called out. "Password is our anniversary." I opened his laptop. As the screen lit up, a notification popped up in the corner. An email. From Jessica. The subject line was just 2 words, "last night." My blood ran cold. My fingers trembled over the trackpad. Every instinct screamed at me to close it, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But I couldn't. I clicked. It was all there. Explicit. Detailed. Not a one-time mistake, but an ongoing affair. They talked about meeting in his office, at her apartment. They made fun of me. My boring, predictable nature. The email ended with, "Can't wait to see you at Sam's birthday dinner. It's going to be a night to remember," winky face. I felt the air leave my lungs. I stumbled to the bathroom, my hand over my mouth, and locked the door. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, but I didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her face was a mask of shock, her eyes wide with a pain so deep it felt physical. I slid down the cool tile wall, pulling my knees to my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, hollowed out, the sound of the shower running in the next room mocking the ruins of my life. For hours, I felt nothing. Just a vast, empty numbness. This was a betrayal on a level I couldn't comprehend. My husband. My sister. The 2 people who were supposed to be my closest allies. But then, slowly, something else began to stir in that emptiness. It started as a flicker, then grew into a cold, hard flame. It was rage. A pure, clarifying rage that burned away the shock and the pain. They thought I was weak. Predictable. Boring. They thought they could destroy me and I would just crumble. They were wrong. I stood up, my legs shaking. I splashed cold water on my face. The woman in the mirror looked different now. The hurt was still there, but it was overshadowed by a new, steely resolve. They wanted a night to remember? Oh, I was going to give them one. I didn't confront him. That would have been messy, emotional. It would have given him the chance to lie, to manipulate, to turn it back on me. No. This required a different approach. This required a plan. The next morning, I made a phone call. Patricia Donovan's office, a crisp voice answered. Patricia was the most ruthless divorce lawyer in Chicago. The kind of lawyer you hire when you want to win, not just settle. "I'd like to schedule a consultation," I said, my voice steady. "My name is Samantha Parker." That was the first step. For the next 3 months, I lived a double life. To Kyle, I was the same wife I'd always been, maybe a little distant, but he was too wrapped up in his own deceit to notice. I made him dinner. I asked about his day. I smiled when he kissed me goodbye in the morning, the taste of betrayal like acid on my tongue. But when he was gone, I was a woman at war. I met with Patricia, who was as sharp and formidable as her reputation suggested. "He has a vasectomy, you say?" she asked, a glint in her eye. "And you have the medical records?" "Oh, this is good." This is very good. She laid out the strategy. We needed more than just the emails. We needed irrefutable proof. So I hired a private investigator. A gruff ex-cop named Davis who looked like he'd seen it all. A week later, he handed me a thick manila envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were photos. Crystal clear photos of Kyle's car parked outside Jessica's apartment building, night after night. Photos of them kissing in her doorway. There were 27 different dates documented. 27 daggers in my heart. Davis had also included phone records and credit card statements. There was a charge from a high-end jewelry store. A week later, Jessica had posted a picture on Instagram showing off a new gold bracelet. From a very grateful client, the caption read, "The liar." Late at night, while Kyle slept, I sat at my home office computer, methodically downloading every financial document I could find. Bank statements, investment portfolios, tax returns, our prenuptial agreement. I created a secure cloud account and uploaded everything. I was building an arsenal. The hardest part was finding the medical report. I had to search through boxes in the basement, my heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards upstairs. I finally found it, tucked away in a file labeled medical. The official letterhead from Sacred Heart Medical Center. Dr. Reynolds' signature. The date of the procedure, 26 months ago. I held the paper in my hand, the key to their destruction. I carefully placed it in a fresh envelope and tucked it into a hidden pocket of my purse. It stayed there for weeks, a cold weight, a promise. When my parents called to say they wanted to throw me a birthday dinner at Merlot, I almost laughed. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Jessica's email had said it would be a night to remember. It was the perfect stage. The perfect audience. "That sounds lovely, Mom," I said, my voice sweet as honey. "I can't wait." I walked back to the table at Merlot, my heels clicking softly on the stone floor. The air was thick with anticipation. Jessica was practically vibrating with excitement, waiting for the explosion. Kyle wouldn't look at me. My parents just looked lost. I slid back into my seat and picked up my fork. I took a slow, deliberate bite of my chocolate lava cake. The rich, warm chocolate was a stark contrast to the ice in my veins. I savored it, closing my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, they were all staring at me as if I'd grown a second head. "What?" I asked, my voice light. "Did you think I was going to scream? Cry? Make a scene? Sorry to disappoint you." Jessica's smug smile faltered. This wasn't in her script. We thought you'd be more upset," she stammered. "Oh, I'm upset," I assured her, taking another bite of cake. I'm incandescent with rage. But unlike some people at this table, I prefer to handle my business with a little more dignity. I set my fork down with a soft click. Besides, there are a few things you all seem to have missed. And I think, for the sake of clarity, we should go over them. I let the silence hang in the air for a beat, then I turned my gaze to Kyle. He flinched like a cornered animal. "You know," I began, my voice conversational, "it's funny. I've known about the affair for 3 months." Kyle's head snapped up. His face went from pale to ghostly white. "What?" he whispered. Jessica just stared, her mouth slightly open. "Your email password, Kyle," I said with a sigh. "Using our anniversary date? A little on the nose, don't you think? Especially when you've been acting so guilty." I saw my mother gasp, but I didn't look at her. My focus was on them. After I read those, very descriptive emails, I continued, I decided to protect my interests. I hired a private investigator. A man named Davis. He's very thorough. I paused, letting the words sink in. He has photos, Kyle. 27 nights of you entering Jessica's apartment building. He has receipts, too. Like the one for that lovely gold bracelet Jessica is wearing. The one she told everyone was from a grateful client. Jessica instinctively covered her wrist with her other hand, her face flushing a blotchy red. You've been investigating me? Kyle's voice was a mix of shock and indignation. That's an invasion of my privacy. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh, and the sound of it seemed to shock them more than anything else. An invasion of your privacy? That's rich, coming from the man who invaded our marriage, our home, our bed. But don't worry. My investigation was perfectly legal. Unlike adultery, which, as it happens, is still grounds for a fault-based divorce in this state. My father cleared his throat. Samantha, perhaps this isn't the time or place. Actually, Dad, this is the perfect time and place, I cut him off, my voice like steel. Because I'm not finished. I turned back to Kyle. 2 months ago, I retained Patricia Donovan as my lawyer. I'm sure you've heard of her. The paperwork for our divorce is already drafted. I've secured copies of all our financial records, protected my assets, and documented every single one of your lies. I was planning to serve you the papers next week. But I suppose this little announcement just moves up the timeline. Kyle looked like he was going to be sick. Jessica was staring at him, the triumph in her eyes replaced by a dawning horror. She had walked right into a perfectly laid trap. But, the baby, my mother whispered, clutching her pearls as if they were a lifeline. Samantha, a divorce is so final. With a baby on the way. Ah, yes. The baby, I said, turning my full attention to my sister for the first time. Her face was a mask of confusion and fear. That's the most interesting part of this whole sordid mess. I reached into my purse. My fingers closed around the cool, crisp envelope I had carried for weeks. I pulled it out and slid it across the table. It landed with a soft thud in front of Jessica. There's just one tiny little problem with your big announcement, Jess, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, forcing them to lean in. A biological impossibility, you might say. Jessica stared at the envelope, then back at me, her eyes wide. You see, I said, leaning forward, 2 years ago, Kyle decided he didn't want the responsibility of children. He was terrified of it. So, to give him peace of mind, I agreed that he should have a vasectomy. The color drained completely from Jessica's face. My mother let out a small, strangled cry. You're lying, Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. Am I? I gestured to the envelope. Open it. It's the full medical report from Sacred Heart Medical Center. Dr. Reynolds performed the procedure 26 months ago. Kyle was on the couch for a week watching basketball. I was the one bringing him frozen peas for the swelling. Isn't that right, Kyle? Kyle couldn't speak. He just stared at the table, his entire body shaking. I looked back at my sister. Her carefully constructed fantasy was crumbling around her in real time. He's shooting blanks, Jessica, I said, the words sharp and clean. So, if you're really pregnant, congratulations are in order. Just not to my husband. I leaned back in my chair, the cold calm settling deep in my bones. So tell us, sister dear. Who is the real father? Do you even know? The silence at the table was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the frantic beating of my own heart. The ambient buzz of the restaurant seemed to fade into the background, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Jessica stared at the envelope on the table as if it were a venomous snake. Her face, which had been flushed with triumph just moments before, was now a ghastly, mottled white. No, she whispered, shaking her head. That's not possible. The records are wrong. You faked them. Kyle finally broke his silence. His voice was a hoarse, broken thing. They're not wrong, Jess. He still wouldn't look at anyone, just stared at his hands, which were clenched into white-knuckled fists on the table. I should have told you. I didn't think it would matter. You didn't think it would matter? Jessica's voice shot up, cracking with hysteria. You let me announce to my entire family that you were the father of my baby, knowing you couldn't be? I never thought you'd get pregnant, he shot back, finally looking at her with a desperate, panicked expression. We were supposed to be careful. You never thought she'd try to trap you, I finished for him, my voice devoid of emotion. Rookie mistake, Kyle. You should have known. Jessica always has an angle. Suddenly, Jessica shoved her chair back so violently it screeched against the floor, drawing stares from the surrounding tables. I need some air, she choked out, grabbing her purse and practically running towards the exit, her head down. Kyle looked torn, his eyes darting from her retreating back to my impassive face. Go on, I said, my voice cold. Follow her. You two deserve each other. He hesitated for only a second before pushing himself up from the table and hurrying after her, leaving me alone with my shell-shocked parents. My father, for the first time that night, looked utterly defeated. He ran a hand over his face. Samantha, he said, his voice heavy. I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say, Dad. I picked up my fork again and took another bite of my now cold cake. It tasted like ash, but I was determined to finish it. This was my birthday, and I was going to eat my goddamn cake. Except, I added, that Jessica might need a different kind of doctor now. One who can help her figure out who the actual father is. My mother was crying silently, black mascara trails running down her cheeks. How can you be so calm, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of horror and disbelief. This is a disaster. I set my fork down and looked her directly in the eyes. The years of resentment, of being overlooked, of being the responsible one who was expected to absorb every slight, finally boiled over. No, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. A disaster is something unexpected and unavoidable, like a hurricane or an earthquake. This was predictable. And it was entirely preventable. I let my words hang in the air. Jessica has been taking what is mine since we were children, and you and Dad have enabled her every single time. You taught her there were no consequences for her actions. The only difference is that this time, I was prepared. I signaled the waiter, who had been hovering nearby with a look of profound discomfort. The check, please. Just as he was about to hand it to me, Kyle returned to the table alone. His face was ashen. Where's Jessica? My mother asked, dabbing her eyes. She's in her car, he said, his voice flat. She's upset. I imagine she is, I said, signing the credit card slip and adding a generous tip. The waiter deserved it. Kyle slid back into his seat, his eyes pleading with me. Sam, please. We have to talk about this. Privately. We're past talking, Kyle, I said, standing up and smoothing down my dress. You made your choice months ago. You just didn't have the courage to tell me to my face. I turned to my parents. Thank you for the birthday dinner. It was certainly memorable. As I gathered my purse, Jessica's voice called out from behind me. Samantha, wait. She had returned, her face blotchy, but a familiar fire of defiance was back in her eyes. You can't just leave like this. I paused at the edge of the table and looked at my sister. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I saw past the perfect hair and the designer dress to the deep, gnawing insecurity that fueled her. The desperate need to win, even if it meant destroying everyone around her. I'm not leaving anything, Jess, I said, my voice soft but firm. I'm walking away. There's a difference. I turned and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't care. As the cool night air hit my face, it felt like the first clean breath I had taken in years. The weight of their expectations, their drama, their toxicity, was finally lifting. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from Kyle. "Please come home. We need to talk." I deleted it without responding. I got in my car, and as I drove away from the wreckage of my old life, I didn't cry. For the first time in a very long time, I felt free. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The house we had shared was no longer a home, it was a crime scene, tainted by their lies. I checked into a downtown hotel, a generic, anonymous room with a king-sized bed that felt mockingly empty. My phone buzzed relentlessly, 27 missed calls from Kyle, a dozen from my parents, and, surprisingly, 5 from Jessica. I put it on silent and dropped it in my purse. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely hollowed out but clear-headed. The emotional earthquake was over, and now it was time to deal with the rubble. My first call wasn't to any of them. It was to Patricia Donovan. "It's time," I said, my voice firm. "I want to file the papers today." "I'll have everything ready," she replied, her voice calm and professional. "Come to my office at 11. That meeting set the tone for the weeks that followed. While my personal life was a chaotic mess of desperate voicemails and manipulative texts, my divorce was a clean, surgical operation. Patricia was a shark, and I was grateful for it. Kyle's messages swung wildly between pathetic pleading, "I made a terrible mistake, Sam." Jessica meant nothing, and bitter anger, "You won't even talk to me, but you had time to freeze our joint accounts?" Real mature. I forwarded every single one to Patricia and never replied directly. 3 days after my birthday, I went back to the house. I didn't go alone. I brought my best friend, Megan, and 2 movers. We were in and out in under 2 hours. I took only what was indisputably mine, my clothes, my books, the furniture I'd inherited from my grandmother. I left his wedding ring on his nightstand with a simple note, "Patricia will be in touch about the rest." I moved into Megan's guest room, a temporary refuge while I figured out my next step. "I still can't believe she would do this," Megan said as we unpacked my boxes. "This is a whole new level of crazy, even for Jessica." "She's been playing a game her whole life that only she knew the rules to," I replied, folding a sweater. "The sad part is, even when she thinks she's won, she loses." Kyle proved my point when he found out I'd moved out. He showed up at Megan's apartment, pounding on the door and shouting my name until a neighbor threatened to call the police. "This isn't fair, Sam," he yelled through the door. "You're not even giving me a chance to explain." The irony was so thick it was suffocating. A few nights later, Jessica called. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sam?" Her voice was small, stripped of its usual confidence. I need my sister." The audacity of it took my breath away. "You needed your sister when you decided to sleep with her husband, Jessica. It's a little late for that now." "I know what I did was unforgivable," she sobbed into the phone. "But I'm so scared. The other guy. Richard, he wants nothing to do with me or the baby. And Kyle won't even return my calls. I'm all alone." A tiny, stupid part of me felt a pang of pity. But I crushed it. "What did you expect, Jess? A parade? You made this mess. You get to clean it up." I hung up the phone, my hand shaking. My parents were no better. My mother kept calling, pushing for family counseling. "She's your sister, Samantha," she'd plead. "And she's going to need support with this baby." "Then you support her, Mom," I finally snapped. "My compassion is currently fully occupied with healing myself from the damage you all caused." 2 weeks after my birthday, I found my own place. A bright, one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood Kyle had always called too trendy. I signed the lease, feeling a thrill of independence I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I bought new furniture, painted the walls a deep teal I knew he would have hated, and slowly began to build a space that was entirely mine. At work, I poured all my frustrated energy into my projects. My boss noticed. I started getting assigned to more challenging accounts. My colleagues were supportive, giving me space but letting me know they were there. One of them, David from the creative department, started leaving a coffee on my desk in the mornings with a simple post-it note that said, "Hang in there, or their loss." It was a small kindness that meant the world. 3 weeks after my birthday, there was a knock on my new apartment door. It was Jessica. I have no idea how she found my address. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy, her perfect hair was a mess. "Kyle's sleeping with someone else," she announced without preamble. "Some woman from his office." Can you believe it? I leaned against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. Yes, Jessica. I can. I can absolutely believe that the man who cheated with you would cheat on you. That's generally how it works. Her face crumpled. I thought we were different. I thought he loved me. What do you want from me, Jess? I asked, my voice flat. I want my sister back, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know I don't deserve it, but I miss you. And I'm so sorry. I looked at her, my only sister, the source of so much of my life's pain. And I felt tired. Just tired. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said honestly. Maybe someday. But not now. Right now, I need to heal. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. But, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. As I closed the door, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in our relationship, I had set a boundary, and she had respected it. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. It was remarkably clean. Faced with Patricia's mountain of evidence, Kyle folded completely. He agreed to all my terms. I kept the investment portfolio I had built before our marriage, half the value of the house when it sold, and my retirement accounts were left untouched. He kept his business shares and his guilt. A year has passed since that disastrous birthday dinner. It feels like a lifetime ago. The woman who sat at that table, calmly eating cake while her world burned down, feels like a stranger to me now. I stood in my apartment, which no longer felt new, but felt like home, and looked at my reflection. I was the same, but different. Stronger. The lines around my eyes were from smiling more, not from stress. My life has changed in ways I never could have imagined. After the divorce, Kyle moved to Denver for a fresh start. I hear he's dating someone new. I wish them luck. They'll need it. Jessica had her baby, a little boy she named Leo. The DNA test confirmed what we all knew: Kyle wasn't the father. The real father, Richard, the pharmaceutical executive, eventually left his wife and moved in with Jessica. Their relationship is a constant storm of drama, according to my mother, but Jessica seems to be a surprisingly devoted mom. My relationship with her is complicated. A few months after Leo was born, she sent me a handwritten letter. I've been in therapy, she wrote. I'm trying to understand why I spent my whole life needing to take what was yours. I was so jealous of the quiet confidence you had, something I never felt. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just for you to know that I'm trying to be better, for Leo's sake. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I visited her and the baby a few weeks later. Leo has my father's eyes and Jessica's chin. He's a beautiful, innocent little boy caught in the middle of a mess he didn't create. Will you be his godmother? She asked, her voice hesitant. I want him to have strong, independent women in his life. Someone like you. I was shocked. But looking at that tiny baby, I heard myself say, I'll think about it. And I meant it. My parents and I are also finding a new normal. After a few tense conversations where I laid out exactly how their favoritism had poisoned our family, my father actually apologized. We thought Jessica needed more attention, he admitted. You always seemed so self-sufficient, Sam. We didn't realize we were hurting you. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. Professionally, I've been thriving. I got that promotion I'd been working toward. I'm now a director at my marketing firm, leading my own team. And David, the man who left coffee on my desk, is now the man who holds my hand when we walk down the street. We're taking it slow, but it's a relationship built on respect and kindness, things I now know are non-negotiable. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was David, here to take me to my 31st birthday dinner. A small gathering with a few close friends. A deliberate reclaiming of a date that had once been a source of so much pain. He handed me a small, wrapped gift. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal. On the first page, he had written a quote, "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths." Tears welled in my eyes. "It's perfect," I whispered. As we walked into the restaurant, my friends cheered. This time, there were no hidden agendas, no cruel surprises. Just the genuine warmth of people who loved me for who I am. My chosen family. I looked around the table at their smiling faces and felt a profound sense of gratitude. The betrayal I endured felt like an ending, but it was actually a beginning. It burned my old life to the ground so that I could build a new one from the ashes, a life that is stronger, more authentic, and entirely mine. My friend raised her glass. "A toast," she said. "To Samantha. Happy birthday." I smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. I took my seat at the center of the table, a place I now occupied without apology or doubt, and raised my glass to join them. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I feel like getting it out there is part of the healing process. I'm curious, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more. It really does help.